Hey guys, Papa Pete back again today for a quick video. It's a response video to one that my friend Russ Lyman made yesterday. And in his video, he chose the top 3 department stores that no longer exist that he really misses. I got thinking, Russ is from down in the States, down in New England, and here I am up in Canada. I was thinking there's probably a few different things, not only because of the geography of where we live, but because of the age of what we are as well. Because I miss things from back when I was a kid, things I used to get my Atari games, my television games, etc. at. So chances are we're going to have different department stores that we miss, and that is the case. Anyway, stick around. In response to Russ Lyman, here are the top 3 department stores or store chains that I miss today.
Papa Pete, the old ass gamer. Papa Pete, the old ass gamer. If you haven't grown up by the age of 50, you don't have to.
After the video, don't forget to check out IntellivisionCollector.com for all your Intellivision needs. That's IntellivisionCollector.com.
Number 3.
So my number 3 pick is going to be one that everybody's going to be familiar with, everybody across Canada and the US, and the one that I miss the third most is Sears. And I'll tell you why I especially miss Sears. You might think, like some of the younger people, that they didn't buy many video games at Sears, but Sears was extremely important in the era of video games when I was a young kid. I'm talking between like 10 and 12 during the Atari games, during the Intellivision age, and man, Sears was the go-to place to get all your video games. And one thing that we always look forward to every year, the world seemed to be a larger place back then. The world wasn't as expanded. You didn't travel as much. You didn't have the internet. And every year you used to look forward to it in September or October, the Christmas wish book would come. And every year the wish book would have different games, new games in it. And I can still remember just itching for that book to come, and you flip through and try to pick out the games. Of course, they weren't even screenshots at the time. They're artist renditions of the game, and that's how you pick these things. You go to the store, you look at the box art. And let's talk about that with Sears as well. Remember, when I was a kid, I had Atari 2600, and the next biggest game for me was the Intellivision. I didn't have one myself. My brother-in-law did. I have it now. And I just love those two systems. And Sears actually had their own license to create games for both systems under their own names. As we all know, the Sears Telegames. It was the Video Arcade for the Atari and the Sears Telegames Super Video Arcade for the Intellivision. And I love collecting all of those games today. They're getting harder and harder to find. But man, I just love the fact that you could get those special games from Sears. So at the end of Sears era, when it finally went out of business here in Canada and in the States in the late 2000 teens, was it still a popular place for video games? No, not really at all. But the biggest thing to remember is this. The Sears Christmas wish books were so important to an entire generation of kids in my age group that receiving those books is embroiled. It's blazoned right in all the memories of anybody who loved video games back at the time.
Number 2.
Now the next one that I'm going to talk about, I was kind of surprised. I was expecting Russ to mention it because it was a chain across the states. Toy and Hobbies, right? KB Toy and Hobby. When I was a kid, my oldest sister, who was 18 years older than me, lived in Bangor, Maine, so I used to spend a lot of time down there visiting. And when I was about 11, 12, they opened up a mall in Bangor, and it had a KB Toy and Hobby shop. And that was also the same time that I got my first Atari for Christmas, and I get down there, and every time we went down to visit, I'd love to go out to KB Toy and Hobby and look at the great big displays of video games they had there. It was open right through until I was in university and later on up into the 90s before it finally closed down, but it was always my real go-to place for this area to get video games. I can remember going in there and getting some of the games that I still have on the shelf. Unfortunately, they're not the same ones that I had back at the time. I had to get new copies, but I can remember buying my copy of Flash Gordon at that KB Toy and Hobby, as well as MASH. I don't know why it's so much the 20th Century Fox, but I bought a ton of those there. And even Megaforce. I remember getting Megaforce and loving that game. later on years, yeah, I used to go in there. I never had a whole lot of money when I went to Bangor to my sister's place to visit. I mean, I might get $5 allowance or something like that. Remember, this is like 1981, 1982. But you could usually get a video game for that, especially during the crash years when all the other things were started to get marked down. And man, I wish I had have had more foresight back then, as don't we all, I'm sure, and bought as many of those games as possible. At the end of the day, I'm just really happy for the memories I have of KB Toy and Hobby, and I wish it still existed today.
Number 1.
So I don't think this is much of a spoiler, but Russ's number 1 pick was a very logical one. It was Toys R Us. But what you may not realize is Toys R Us only closed in the U.S. We still have all the Toys R Us stores here in Canada. Matter of fact, I was just in one 3 days ago. So it's definitely not going to be my number 1 pick. It is got all right video games. It's probably not quite what it used to be, but it's still Toys R Us. It's still the same old store here in Canada. So not on my list. So this pick is going to be a little bit different. My number 1 pick isn't even going to be a store that I ever have visited. But I've read so much about it. I've heard so much about it. So many big collectors who started very, very early credit this store with being really the best spot for them to start building their collection. And that is Funko Land. Funko Land, if you're not familiar with it, has been gone for absolutely years and years. I think it was the 90s where it eventually got bought out by GameStop, as GameStop is nowadays, who ended up buying out Electronics Boutique and Babbage's and everything until we had this big monolith of a video game department store that we have today with GameStop, and they're having troubles themselves. But anyway, Funko Land was extremely important back in the day because it was created by a guy in Minnesota, started off as just mail order, and he would have big ads in the different magazines of the day with a complete listing of all the different games in it, like Eddie S was the big one, and how much he'd pay for it and how much he'd sell them for. And it brought games in from all over the country. Back then, there was no such thing as the internet. There was no eBay. It was all done through magazines. And it's amazing the business that they created. There was none of this artificial collecting, hyping up the prices of games. I mean, you know, the biggest rumor going is back then, Funko Land had 29-cent stadium events, for Pete's sakes. $4.99, Bucky O'Hare's. John Riggs has shown that one of his that he got for $4.99 years ago. $6.99 for Little Samson. It was amazing. These games were just incredibly cheap. And yeah, I know for a fact that if I had been able to go to one, there just was none in this area. It started off mail order. I do remember seeing the ads in the magazines back in the day, but there was none of the brick and mortar stores in this anywhere near me that I'm aware of. Of course, they've been gone now. There's hundreds of stores at its peak, and they're long gone. But if I could just go back in time, I would love to be able to go in and see the inside of a Funko Land today, just to browse and realize what could have been. Guys, that's it for today's video. It was a real quick one. 3 department stores, 3 chains that I really, really missed today. Yeah, I never did visit Funko Land, but I think that really deserved to be mentioned. Don't forget to check out Russ Lyman's site as well. Russ does some great material. He does his top 3 Tuesdays every week. He does all kinds of different craft things with different video games. He builds different types of controllers. And if you haven't checked out the car that he has and the work that he's put into that, it's just amazing. He does great videos, a lot of fun to watch, real high quality editing, and just a really upbeat guy to watch. So anyway, thanks for spending a little bit of time with me today. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video. Take care, guys.
Papa Pete, the old ass gamer. Papa Pete, the old ass gamer. If you haven't.
What's up, guys? Russ Lyman here, and you're watching Papa Pete, the old guy gamer.
What the hell?